I'm Sarveshi Shukla, and this is Chicago Indian Arts Podcast. Keith Ferrazzi grew up in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, in a family that worked hard, held themselves with dignity, and gave everything they had to build a life. He went from there to Yale, to Harvard Business School, to becoming the youngest chief marketing officer in the Fortune 500 at Starwood Hotels. He is the founder of Ferrazzi Greenlight, one of the world's foremost executive team coaching companies, and has advised Fortune 50 corporations, the World Bank, and the governments. He's the author of 5 books that have genuinely changed how the world thinks about relationships and leadership. Never Eat Alone, Who's Got Your Back, Leading Without Authority, Competing in the New World of Work, and his most recent Never Lead Alone, 10 Shifts from Leadership to Teamship, a USA Today bestseller and one of Forbes' top 10 business books of 2024. He's also the recipient of Coach's 50 Award by Thinkers 50, named a Global Leader for Tomorrow by the World Economic Forum, and a member of Fast Company Leadership Hall of Fame. And now I want to say something personal. Keith's Beyond Connection program is where I stopped thinking about what I wanted to build and actually started building it. I will talk about it in just a little bit because I'm not saying any of this as flattery, but as fact. I'm deeply honored to have him here. Keith Ferrazzi, welcome.
Ashna, what a lovely introduction. Thanks so much. And I'm looking forward to getting to know your crew here a little bit better.
Wonderful. It's our honor. I want to start, there are many ways I can go about this, but I want to start with, your father and how you've talked about him and the influence of him on your work. You've written about him with real love and gratitude. You've said he contributed so much to who you are today, and through that, what your books are about. What did he teach you simply by the way how he went through his everyday life that no classroom or boardroom could have?
Well, look, the most important thing we learned was that we were very poor. And I wasn't born into a family that had ever even had an education. So for us, any door that I wanted opened to opportunity would not happen from within the family unit. We realized that, in a sense, nepotism can be created, not born into. The idea my father created was that people will open doors of opportunity, and you should be living your life with authentic relationship, meeting, knowing, serving, co-creating with others to open doors of opportunity. And that was really the bottom line. I mean, it was understanding. I got into Yale because the amazing people that I worked for and caddied for at the country club opened doors and introduced me to the idea that I could even get into an Ivy League school. I was interested in politics, and doors were opened through people that I got to know and got to understand what they wanted to achieve, what their missions were, and how I could work with them and co-create their missions. And today, I live my life that way. And as you and I know, there was my first book, Never Eat Alone, is focused on building networks, opening those doors with individuals. And subsequently, I've learned that building community is also very powerful. So instead of just running around building individual relationships, building a community of individuals looking to co-create extraordinary things together, lifting each other up. I call it co-elevation. That is a much more efficient way and much more legacy creating, I think, because these institutions continue to exist even beyond you, these communities.
That is so true. And with experience, I can tell that what you embodied in the Beyond Connection program, it was literally, for someone coming in and getting to live your book, getting to live by the principles that you just talked about, and co-elevation. Since then, what that has given rise to in my personal circles and the circle that I made through Beyond Connection is incredible. I want to talk about something specific that you have mentioned in your book. You talked about building an armor at Yale, remaking yourself, performing belonging, and then a moment in the secret society circle where you took a piece off and felt that, you felt more alive than ever. I'd love to know, what happened in that moment for you and how did that transition come about? Because I see that as a foundation of so many things that you've written since.
Yeah, that's good insight that you picked that moment. So, aside from Yale and the secret societies, let me sort of extrapolate. The bottom line is, as I mentioned earlier, building relationships can't be transactional. Relationships aren't transactional. Contacts are transactional. Business associates can be transactional. Relationships need to be authentic. And the golden key to opening up a real relationship instead of just a transactional connection is showing up as yourself, and also being caring enough to be of service to others, intimacy and generosity. And and how does one create that? I believe that you can learn how to do it individually, but I also like to do it systematically. So what you learned we have a program, an 8-week program that we teach called Beyond Connection. And Beyond Connection teaches folks to tell their story in an authentic fashion and teaches folks, like you just mentioned, I mean, here I am in front of your audience. And one of the first things we discussed was my impoverished upbringing. And for a lot of people, that's a connection point. Whether you were poor growing up or not, you could empathize with a poor kid from Pittsburgh struggling during the crash of the steel industry to grow up and to do well for himself and his family. And so that kind of authenticity is something that you can learn to be comfortable with. I didn't used to be comfortable with it. Growing up poor, I hid being poor. That's the armor that you were talking about. And the secret societies at Yale have a night every week where somebody shows up and tells their most vulnerable and authentic birth story. Like, what did they have to deal with when they grew up? But I do that every week with my executive teams that I coach.
All right.
So I coach executive teams. Last week, we had 2 of the most well-known and powerful brand named companies in the world. And I had the executive team sharing what experience of their past do they think has the biggest influence on who they are and how they show up today. It's the same thing that happened to me at the Secret Society when we did our backstory. And I learned that is a very powerful tool. If you can get a group of folks to be willing to shed their armor, even just one chink of their armor, they can begin to show up more authentically overall.
I'm just awestruck as you're saying that, primarily because, I when I joined the program, I kind of went with like a blank slate, not knowing what to expect. And within the first session or the second, and you came in and you had this powerful presence, like a very simple, open presence, being yourself. And I remember thinking at that point that I had followed your work for a decade prior to that. And I had always wanted to know you. And very few times, you come across a person who you've read and see them in the exact authenticity that they've written something in. So it was so refreshing to see that. And that's where I want to lean in slightly more on your process as a writer, because I think beyond everything, not everyone in your capacity, in your caliber, can write the kind of books you've written. And I want to know, was it always in your mind that now I'm going to write a book, or how did that happen?
Well, when I was growing up, books were a big deal. And I'm not saying they're not a big deal today, but they're less of a big deal.
Yeah.
People don't necessarily read them, and it's very easy to write a book today, particularly with Claude and other AI. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I mean, I just advised a person the other day, a healer, a beautiful healer, who has a wonderful healing practice of touch, and how intimacy in our lives doesn't have enough touch. And I thought it was a beautiful concept that he and his wife. And I said, you should write a book. And he was like, oh, I can't even begin to think. I was like, listen, all I want you to do is I want you to write down the 10 things that you want anyone to learn from you? What are they? And then for each of those 10 things, just talk. Just talk about each of those 10 things in whatever meandering way you want and record all of this and then throw it in to an LLM and said, write a book. It'll do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. Particularly, again, back to this point of you were alluding to the idea that I write books that might be a little different than others. I believe that the things that frighten you the most are what you should lean into. And to me, the idea of being exposed and vulnerable to a group of individuals and sharing my fears, my vulnerabilities, sharing things that I'm embarrassed by, that is to me the highest pinnacle of service that I can give the world. And I just need to work my way up to it. And most of my books have shared a lot of that. And I'm still thinking about a couple of books that I still have other lessons to teach others, because it makes these books approachable and it makes me approachable.
That is indeed true. Yes, it makes you super approachable. And that was one of the first things the first time I met you in person, we were together in a session and you were to give the next address and you came and sat next to me and very unassumingly you said, "Hi, I'm Keith." And I was like, of course I know who you are. It was that humility that's not limited to, a persona. That's who you are. And the more I've gotten to interact with you and see you in your inner circle, and the way you always host those graduation dinners at your place, like you open up your world to everyone, and that generosity of spirit is shown in practice. It's not a PR situation. It's really who you are. And I absolutely love that.
But let me give you a little secret. When I show up in my own home and I'll say to people, "Hi, I'm Keith Ferrazzi," part of that, to be honest, is because I meet so many people and sometimes I don't always remember everybody. And when I introduce myself, it usually is a signal to say, "Hey, if I can introduce myself, maybe you can introduce yours."
True.
I usually introduce myself in that way. And then if somebody says, "Oh, I know you, we've met before," and I said, "Yeah, but people meet a lot of people. I always want to make it easy."
Yeah.
And and then that usually gets the point where people are willing to introduce themselves back, and then I remember who they are.
That's a good trick. I'll remember that. I kind of wanted to, initially I had thought I'll ask you this question later, but you already alluded to writing in today's age with AI. On our podcast, we've had several writers, a lot of them primarily focusing on fiction writing, and they had very strong views about AI getting in the creative field. I was amazed to see.
And they were against it or they were for it?
Mixed views. Like part of them felt that the creativity of the process should not be towards artificial intelligence. Like it should free us from the things that we can then do the creative part, and it's doing the mundane. So I was interested more in understanding your view. Like, how do you, when you pick a favorite book, say a fiction, what is your worldview now if you read it, whether AI wrote it or a human wrote it?
It's irrelevant to me. The question is, how does it move me? So look, I do understand that my book was one of the books that was on a list of those that was consumed by one of the LLMs inappropriately, where early on they were just, they took the book, they ran it into the LLM, and apparently I've got some money coming back as a result. Sure, I'll take the money, but it doesn't bother me. Like, to me, once my work gets out into the world, it's open source. I understand that some people make their full living off of their art and their book, so I'm not negating that. But I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, AI is air. It's like gravity. We can't resist it. It's all around us. It's going to even be more ubiquitous. So I think that my treatise to you is to lean into it and get out ahead of it instead of fight it or resist it. It's not good. I saw a message from the Pope this weekend where he is suggesting that AI is dismantled. And I was like, whoa, okay. I thought about that. I was like, I don't think that talk is going to make that happen, but I do recognize maybe from his perspective, it was a hedge so he could be on record 20 years from now. See, the church told you so. It's like, so he just put it out there, not expecting it to actually happen, but instead it was a brand elevation for the church, which I could get. But look, it is air, and I think resisting it is futile. Now, learning how to, if you want to complain about it, do something about it. Like, I'm worried about the loss of jobs with AI. And I'm worried about it getting, not that the jobs should be preserved. I mean, I preferred this weekend talking to an AI to book my travel in Italy this summer than a human. I was able to get them instantly. I was able to not feel pressured on time. It was there the whole time. And I was asking it 1,000 questions. And when I left and came back, it was still there, right?
Right.
I love that. Does it bother me that AI has replaced a human call center worker? Well, it bothers me that someone's out of work. That bothers me. But it doesn't bother me that there is a solution that other people have chosen to use. Now, what do we do about the people who are out of work? I'm working on that. I'm working with senators. I'm working with AI leadership. And I'm asking the question, what obligation do we have? Like, the most disenfranchised people in America have been forgotten for a century. We don't take care of our people like other countries do. And we're now talking about universal basic income. So I'm creating a community of people who care about creating a safety net that has purpose for people in this world. So I'm using the community strategy to solve a big social problem. And I'm just a guy. Like, who the hell thought that Keith Ferrazzi should have anything to do with aggregating people on this topic? There's no reason. But every one of you listening, if you care about something, stop complaining about it, get off your ass, and start doing something about it. And you don't have to do it yourself. You have to be the convener of individuals who collectively could do it. All you've got to be is the humble servant to the mission. And that's what we teach in Beyond Connection. I mean, we teach folks to pick a mission, identify a group of individuals, and serve those individuals to help achieve that mission. We call it co-elevate, to have a shared mission that you're trying to achieve, but at the same time pushing each other higher to achieve it. It doesn't require, I'm not much for being feudal and being a victim. I want people to activate.
And I think your life's work shows that. In fact, I would say that what Beyond Connections did for me was exactly what you were saying, that, stop sitting on your ass and actually doing something about it. And that's how, when I joined the program, I was in the state of, I don't know what's happening and what do I do? And it helped me through that process to take charge. And by the time I came to graduation, I started it. By the time we got into the new year, I had a clear, crisp plan. Is everything going hunky-dory? No, it's not. It never will. But I think it just shifted the way I was placing myself and things. So yeah, starting of my company, starting of something that I had never thought I'd be able to do is greatly attributed to what you've done in that program and Beyond Connection and what it does in those 8 weeks. I have had several other people who've joined the program because of that reason. And I'm grateful to you for creating that. And, we must grow more there.
Thank you.
I'm going to be mindful of time. I know you have to end soon. So one quick thing that I want to understand. In 2024, you gave a big keynote in India, which was attended by more than 1,500 senior leaders and from Middle East, India, Southeast Asia. And you've talked about the work that you've talked. And as an Indian immigrant, there is a specific thing that kind of happens within our community. Families carry a specific story that earn your place through hard work, quietly and alone. And your work kind of gives a very different perspective, that isolation is not strength, that asking for help is not weakness, and that people around you are not your competition. What would you want to say to people like me and in our broader community where probably you've seen that where can we do better in with this message that you have?
Well, first of all, and I'll state it a little more emphatically, nobody ever gets anywhere alone. Your first customer, your first hire, the person who was your first referral from the good work that you did. So it's ridiculous to think that we should do this ourselves. By the way, this is not unique to India. This is what we called in the United States, John Wayne rugged individualism. I mean, pull yourself up, Horatio Alger, pull yourself up from your bootstraps, etc. I've had to spend a lifetime dismantling that in my own head. And so many kids still feel it. It's like, oh, I don't want to take it. I don't want to get any help from my parents. I want to do this myself. I'm like, kid, you're blessed to have parents that could help you. Shut up. It's like, just take the advantage you have. Now turn around and crush it. Do great things for the world and other people to make sure that you pay back all of other people's great support, help, etc. So look, I mean, I don't know. It's a sadness to me. Now, there's a difference between, on one end of the extreme, I got to do this myself. The other end of the extreme is, I'm going to take advantage of people to get what I want.
Right.
I'm talking about something that I call co-elevation. We're gonna do this together. We're gonna lift up each other higher. If you have that mindset, there's no shame in. It's interesting. I got my little hand up. There's no shame in reaching out for both help and service. But you reach out to service first, and that's the thing that you learn in Beyond Connection. That if you want to reach out and get help, reach out and serve.
That's a great point. My last closing question for you. You've spent over 25 years across 5 books and thousands of coaching sessions, making the case that no one rises alone. What is the thing you're still learning to let others help you carry?
I got to admit, it's probably all the same stuff still. I mean, there's I can still 10x my mindset. I can still 10x this idea of co-creation and partnership. Beyond Connection was created in partnership with other entrepreneurs, and learning the muscle of not having to build it myself. There's a big difference between being an employer and hiring people that you co-create with, to partnering and co-creating. There's real nuance of skills in teamship that I teach and I still have to learn. I would say everything that I teach, I'm still a humble student of.
Wonderful. Keith Ferrazzi, the leader, the thinker, the author, and the person who's been instrumental in changing my personal life. His work has shaped how leaders think about relationships, candor, and collective performance for more than 2 decades. His books are essential reading. If you've not read yet, start with Never Eat Alone. And if you lead a team, Never Lead Alone belongs on your desk. Chicago Indian Arts exists for conversations like this one, for Indian arts, culture, and voices in the city, for professionals, artists, founders, and dreamers who understand that people around you are your greatest resource. We are grateful to Keith and his team for his time and his generosity. And we are grateful to all of you for listening, for tuning in. Until next time, this is Sarveshi Shukla signing off.